The elegant world of Victorian women, with their lace parasols, tightly laced corsets, and voluminous petticoats, has long fascinated us. But behind the poised exterior and refined etiquette was a world of hidden struggles and unspoken routines. None more intriguing and overlooked than the most human of acts, relieving oneself. In an era obsessed with modesty, propriety, and appearances, the simple act of using the toilet became a complex, secretive ritual for women encased in layers upon layers of restrictive clothing. But how did they do it? This is the untold story of the secret toilet routine of Victorian women in their puffy dresses. Imagine waking up in a dimly lit room where the windows are draped in heavy brocade curtains. The fire crackles gently in the hearth, casting long shadows on the walls. A young woman, perhaps of the upper class, is attended by her maid. The first task of the day is dressing. But Victorian dressing wasn't a simple affair. It was a meticulous, layered process that could take up to an hour. Chemise, bloomers, corset cover, petticoats, sometimes up to 5 or 6, then a crinoline or bustle depending on the fashion of the decade, and finally the dress itself, often made of wool or heavy silk. Some women even wore metal hoops to keep the skirts bell-shaped. The crinoline alone could span several feet wide. These gowns were symbols of status, elegance, and decorum, but they were also incredibly impractical. Yet women were expected to maintain composure and grace while wearing them, whether at home, in public, or while traveling. So, how did they manage their natural bodily needs while dressed in what was essentially a mobile cage? Victorian society was deeply modest. Talking about bodily functions was considered vulgar. Bathrooms as we know them today were rare, and even the word toilet was avoided in polite conversation. Women were expected to be delicate and restrained, both in speech and in action. In homes, chamber pots were the standard for nighttime relief, usually kept under the bed or in a commode. In wealthier homes, water closets began appearing, but they were often detached from the main living quarters or found only on the ground floor. For a woman encased in tight corsets and a heavy dress, going up and down stairs multiple times a day for such private business wasn't ideal. So began the development of the secret system, a routine passed down from mother to daughter, maid to mistress. For starters, undergarments were specifically designed for such routines. Victorian women wore open-crotch drawers, split bloomers that allowed them to relieve themselves without having to remove any layers. They simply needed to position themselves correctly, aided by practice and sometimes their maid. These drawers, though seemingly shocking by today's standards, were entirely functional. They enabled women to squat or sit without disrobing. Then came the challenge of the dress. Lifting the enormous skirts required strength and dexterity. Most women did it themselves, bunching the petticoats, crinoline, and outer gown in front, or at the sides and holding them up with one hand or tucking them under their arms. In more formal settings, or for upper-class women, maids assisted discreetly. The process was done quickly and with precision, all while maintaining the illusion of grace and cleanliness. Public toilets were almost non-existent. In fact, the idea of a woman needing to use a restroom in public was almost scandalous. When out for long hours, shopping, visiting, or attending social events, women relied on creative timing and sometimes abstained from food and drink beforehand. In extreme cases, they used a tool that was both practical and taboo, the bordaloo. This small porcelain urinal, shaped like a gravy boat, was designed for women to relieve themselves discreetly while standing or slightly squatting. It could be slipped under the skirt and removed after use, sometimes even without needing to find a private space. Servants, especially maids, played a significant role in helping women manage these hidden routines. Discretion was key. A well-trained maid would know how to anticipate her mistress's needs, prepare the chamber pot in advance, and help lift the layers without ever exchanging a word about it. These tasks were part of the unspoken duties of service. As the decades progressed, improvements in plumbing slowly began to change the landscape. The introduction of the water closet in the mid to late 19th century, especially in middle and upper-class homes, offered some relief, literally. But even then, privacy remained a precious and guarded experience. The flushing toilet was still considered noisy and improper in many circles. Some women waited until their husbands were out or asleep to use it. Travel presented unique challenges. Carriages and trains had no toilets, and long journeys often meant holding it in for hours. Some women carried portable urinals discreetly in their bags. On very long trips, makeshift privies were constructed at stops, but they were basic and offered little privacy. Even more startling, when Queen Victoria herself traveled, special arrangements were made, including portable chamber boxes and elaborate screens. Lower-class women, of course, faced a harsher reality. Working women had little time for modesty. Factory girls and maids often used communal privies that were filthy and unhygienic. Privacy was a luxury. In urban areas, public toilets for women didn't appear until the late 19th century, and even then, they were controversial. The First Lady's Public Convenience in London opened in 1852, but it faced criticism for encouraging immodest behavior. Some believed that if a woman needed a public restroom, she shouldn't be outside at all. For menstruating women, the situation was even more complex. Pads were handmade, reusable cloths, often fastened with belts. There were no tampons, and little was known about hygiene. Women concealed their periods at all costs, enduring discomfort in silence. In some homes, menstruation was treated as a mild illness, and women were given permission to rest, but they were still expected to maintain dignity and cleanliness. Night, the chamber pot reigned supreme. Most women learned to use it with minimal fuss. Some pots were even built into chairs, disguised as elegant furniture. These were known as commode chairs. The smell was an issue, of course, so bowls were covered with cloth or lids and emptied by servants early in the morning. Perfumed handkerchiefs were sometimes used to mask odors. Despite all these obstacles, Victorian women perfected the art of discreetly managing their needs. It was a silent rebellion of sorts, navigating an environment that insisted on denial of the body, and yet finding a way to maintain function and self-care. Their routines, though hidden, were rooted in strength, adaptation, and resilience. The transformation of toilet habits in the Victorian era reflects a broader social evolution. As women's roles began to shift toward the end of the century, so too did attitudes toward hygiene, privacy, and bodily autonomy. The introduction of women's restrooms in public spaces, the eventual acceptance of sanitary products, and the gradual relaxation of dress codes were all signs of progress. Looking back, it's easy to romanticize the fashion and culture of the Victorian period. But beneath the lace and velvet was a daily struggle to retain dignity in a world that valued appearance above practicality. Victorian women mastered their secret routines not out of choice, but out of necessity. And in doing so, they revealed a quiet strength that history often overlooks. Their secret toilet routines are not just an odd historical footnote. They are a testament to endurance, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will to adapt. Every rustle of fabric and every carefully lifted skirt was an act of survival within a cage of beauty. In those grand portraits and daguerreotypes, we see poise and grace. But now, we also know the hidden truth behind the stillness, the secret world behind the puffy dresses.